Hey everybody, you're listening to Capital Placement's Career Growth Podcast. I recall gaining a little bit of financial independence around my late teens, and it meant the world to me. But what I hadn't realized at that time was that this independence came with a pretty hefty price tag. And there's so much to learn when it comes to personal finance, and often many of us didn't get to learn about it in school. So as adults, it gets pretty overwhelming. And that's exactly why we have Ola, founder of All Things Money, and my colleague Angel, content manager at Capital Placement, here with us today to share their insights and experiences. Hi, thank you both for joining us today. And let's start with a quick introduction. Ola, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so as Carlos kindly introduced me as, I'm Ola and I'm the founder of All Things Money, which is a personal finance platform that teaches young adults how to manage their finances effectively. Like you kind of said, we're not really taught much about finances in school or university or beyond. So yeah, I kind of took it upon myself to kind of teach people how to manage their finances instead online.
That's
That was
amazing.
great.
Thank you so much. Honestly,
We love your work.
Thank
we
you.
do. Big
Huge fan.
fans, big fans. Angel, how about you?
Right. So, hi everyone. My name is Angel. I'm the content manager at Capital Placement. I've been working in London for 2 years now, and managing my budget and finances has always been, it's a huge learning curve for me. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I definitely have something to share. And hopefully I can help someone that would make me really, really happy. But I'm also here to listen to some of the tips that Ola has for us, for me.
Perfect.
We both are. We got a lot to learn today. So I think let's take a minute and talk a little bit about our respective financial journeys. So what were some of the earliest habits you had around money management? Ola, let's like talk a little bit about your personal history with personal finances.
Good question. So, interestingly enough, our money habits, according to a number of studies, develop from as young as seven. However, I can't remember how I managed my money when I was 7 years old, if I even had any money then. But I think when it comes to managing my money, I actually went to boarding school. So I went to school away from home. So my earliest memories of actually having to manage money was when I was 11, because that's the first time I ever had my own bank card. And that's when my mum used to transfer me like a weekly allowance. So yeah, I used to make sure I budgeted that well, because obviously I didn't have like parents at home I could just kind of ask extra money for. So yeah, from then I then obviously went throughout secondary school and then got my first job at 17, and that's when I really had the interest in just trying to save regularly and making sure I actually had some money to fall back on, because again, at 17 you have your own car, you then have like other things you want to go like spend your money on, such as holidays and all these things. So I really learned how important it is to be able to save your money, and I needed to, because obviously I was working, so I had to keep some of it to be able to enjoy as well. And then obviously went to university, and I think again those habits kind of stuck with me there, just knowing how to budget effectively and then also save alongside that.
So you actually started really early on compared to myself and most people I know. So that's a completely like different perspective because I can't imagine having that kind of like those plans or that much insight into it at like 17,
Yeah,
quite
it's really
frankly.
interesting. Yeah, and I think what, because of like I said, I had a car, so my car insurance wasn't cheap, and I did split some of the costings with my mum. But again, I had to contribute something towards my car insurance, and I remember it used to take a forkload out of my money. So I used to make sure, like, okay, for my next year's renewal, I wouldn't have some money saved aside, so I don't have to fork out money monthly and things like that. So I did start to develop those habits quite young.
Oh, okay. That is that's our role model right there. Angel, could you rep the other side, please, for my
Oh,
sake?
definitely
Yeah,
on the
how
other
what was
side. I was gonna say I haven't been able to so-called manage my own money or understand earning and spending, because I wasn't on the earning side until I got into university. So it's more like at the early age I was mainly on spending, and my parents obviously didn't trust me with that, so I have like very, very limited budget. Or if I can remember, I think it's mainly if I need something I would normally ask, and then they would evaluate the decision with me. So I've kind of learned a lot from my parents in terms of like how I make decisions about purchasing something.
Mm.
And then I go into my university in the UK, because I'm an international student
Yeah.
studying here, is when I started working part time and then actually realized how hard it was to just earn, like the minimum wage per hour, and then compare that to how much I'm spending. I'm not saying
Mm.
I'm spending a lot, but it's more like you have a new understanding of with money. You have a new understanding of budgeting compared to the way I was before. Even though I was still like evaluating my decisions, but it was just slightly different from then on with me, like for me.
Amazing.
Was was there like a particular incident that sort of triggered the mindset switch? And you were just
Um,
like, okay, this is the day. Like, oh, this is the coffee that broke me.
oh my
Was
god.
there a moment like that?
I don't know if Ola can relate, but I remember I was reviewing my contract. My first job was a sales associate. My first year of university, I was doing it part time, and I was like, okay, my at the time I think per hour was £8 something. At the time, when was it? Probably seven, oh, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, around £8 per hour. And I was like, okay, a cup of coffee would be £4. That would be two cup of coffees. And why am I drinking two cups of coffee per day?
Yeah.
Like, it's more like you started doing that. It's actually not too healthy in a way, but you started thinking in this way. It's kind of like a moment of realization when I read my contract and know how much I'm earning per hour. I guess the second one is when I graduated and I started to like pay rent from my salary. It's another huge one that hit me.
Hmm.
It was like just put, I don't know, a good 50, 40, 60, I don't know, like the ratio percent of my income directly to my rent. And luckily I had I think a good spending habit, so it wasn't such a big hit that I have to like just stop spending or like have to look into it too closely. But yeah, my first job and when I need to pay rent would be the two realization moments for me.
It's interesting that even though there are certain aspects that we can all relate to in our own like individual journeys, it's still vastly different.
Mm.
Our experiences have been vastly different. But there is a recent surge in people wanting to be on the grind, make money, quote unquote, and the hustle culture, and in turn they're also becoming really interested in gaining more knowledge about these things to become more
Oh yeah.
aware of it.
Mm.
And I think the one place that all of our paths converge is content, creating content, understanding our audience, figuring out what their needs are, and creating the right kind of content for them.
Yeah.
And Ola, you've like successfully, you have your own podcast, you have ebooks, you have TikTok, your website, you have Instagram, and you put out a lot of varied content, a lot of useful content, different forms. How did you start? And like, did you expect this kind of response to it? Did you expect this kind of growth?
No, so I started All Things Money back in the very first lockdown. I actually meant to move to Australia, but obviously, thanks to COVID, no one can travel anywhere. So I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I just taught myself then how to invest in the stock market. And I got some of my friends investing as well. And I was just like, I would love to teach other people how to invest and manage their finances. So I took to Instagram first to kind of, share some tips. And I thought it would just be like a hobby that would last a month and then go to Australia. But obviously, lockdown lasted a lot longer than we thought it would. And then later on that summer, I was like, oh, it'd be great to see if I could maybe monetize this platform. And I launched my very first ebook, and then slowly was able to kind of then started doing blog posts and then started the podcast and then started doing workshops. And yeah, it's kind of grown exponentially. It's crazy to say that this is now my full-time job because that was never meant to be the plan. But yeah, All Things Money keeps me very busy and I could talk about money all day, every day.
I love that.
Well,
I love that.
yeah, honestly, yes. Also, and frankly, like we spoke about this before, I'd have loved to have seen more content like this in my teens,
Hmm.
because handling my own finances always seemed very complicated and frankly a little scary. But I think learning through experience as an adult also taught me more about my own spending habits, allowing me to manage it in a way that fits my personal needs.
Yeah.
But I would have still appreciated if we could have had some basic principles taught to us at a young age, like some basic principles that we should all be aware of. That would be
Mm,
really helpful, right?
Yeah.
So let's do it right now. Let's like decide on some. Ola, you could be the deciding voice. What would you
Okay.
say are some fundamental personal finance principles?
Absolute fundamental is a budget. I think it's really important that we know how to budget our finances, because without a budget, you don't know how much you can spend on a regular basis. I'm a very sociable being, and I love seeing my friends and going out and going to dinners and all that things. And it'll be impossible for me to have fun if I didn't know how much I could spend on having fun. So having a budget there is really important. But also it allows you to then work out how much you can afford to save. So loads of people always try and tell me that they want to save, but I'm like, okay, how much can you afford to save? But they can't tell me because they don't have a budget. So again, it comes back to that budget. And then again, when it comes to investing, again, it's how much can you afford to invest? It comes back to your budget. So I'd say the absolute fundamental is starting off with a budget.
Absolutely 100%. And like speaking of budgets, when we use the term budget,
Mm,
it could mean different things based on different contexts.
yeah.
And the average person who is not financially aware in general would be like, okay, it's fine, you want me to budget, but what is a budget? How do I even begin budgeting? Somebody help me. Okay, let's help those people. Definitely not asking for myself.
Mm.
Let's begin. Let's begin with how we start budgeting.
Good
What are your tips?
question.
How would you approach it?
So there's two kind of main ways or methods I like to share when it comes to budgeting. Number one is the traditional budgeting method. So this is where you work out your income. So whether that's money from your full-time job, if you have a side hustle, business profits, things like that, that classes as your income. And then you want to work out what your expenses are. So how much does it cost you to be an adult? So what is your rental payments, your utility bills, if you have any subscriptions, etc., etc. You want to make a list of all your expenses. And then you want to deduct your expenses from your income and hopefully be left with some disposable income. And that's how much you can then live comfortably every month, knowing that your expenses have been taken care of. So this is a budgeting method I use personally. And I actually go one step further into giving myself a weekly budget. So if I may be left with, let's say, £400 at the end after all my expenses are deducted, and there's 4 weeks in September, for example, I would divide £400 by 4 weeks, and that allows me to see that I can spend comfortably £100 a week, seeing friends, socialising, all that good fun stuff. But I know at least all my bills and essential spending has all been covered for. So that's one budgeting method. And then another popular one is the 50-30-20 budgeting method. So this is a very popular method that a lot of people, when I kind of share it with, they're like, how have I never heard of this, or how have I never done it myself before? And the aim of this budgeting method is that 50% of your income goes towards your needs, so that's your necessary spending. 30% goes towards your wants, so whatever you want to spend your money on. So I always say it's really important that you can have fun and budget. And then 20% of your remaining 100% then goes towards future you, whether that is saving or investing in the stock market. That 20% is basically for future you. And obviously, I'm not naive to know that the cost of living has increased. So you might not be able to do a 50-30-20 split, but you might want to adjust those categories according to what your current situation is right now. So that might be 60-30-10. That might be a 70-10-20 split. The quick maths, if I can, hopefully they all kind of calculate to 100%. But yeah, that's basically two main budgeting methods I like to preach about.
Well, that's super helpful, actually. But it also involves understanding how priorities work as well,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Because quite frankly, if you saw the first budget that I ever came up with, you'd just tell me to leave. You'd just tell me to leave. I'm
Did you
sorry.
put gaming first
I mean,
or
it
buy
felt
books?
like a need to me. Okay, it's not my fault. A game costs like $60.
No comment.
I'm just saying, okay, there are needs and then there are needs,
Yeah.
but there's still needs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that is
I
that's
get
just
that.
how
I
it
get
is.
that.
Mm.
I'm just like, how would okay, Angel, how would you prioritize? How would you prioritize your spending? How do you approach it?
I completely agree with what Ola said earlier, and I'm still at the more traditional method side of things, and I definitely want to move into like um, looking into the ratios and looking into like the 10% into savings very very soon.
Mm.
I wanted educate myself more on that, and one of my friends also recommended me to read a book on educating women on how to manage their finances better. So I'm on this journey.
Good.
But going back to the more traditional method, definitely understanding what are your fixed costs. So like going back to rent, utility bills, and then some of the things that you definitely need to do, I would say evaluate. For me, I have Google storage every single month because I store a lot of my documents there. This is important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I recently subscribed to Spotify because I realized if I want to go out for a walk, I would like to have music. To me, I evaluated that is something that I would like to spend. So some of the subscriptions, and I now prioritize a lot more on cooking than eating out. So then I would probably put slightly more towards groceries, uh, and then I would just like spend time learning how to cook, and then I guess buy a lot more fresh vegetables and fruits as well
Mm-hmm.
compared to what I did in the past, which is more on like ready meals. We don't like to say that, but that was what happened. I guess yeah, those are my priorities to me to kind of evaluate this season of your life, what's most important to you. And I've started to evaluate what's important to me in the next season, which is more into maybe investing, and then I'll prepare myself on like reading some books and going through like following people like Ola to understand, because you get these knowledge without you intentionally having to, and
Yeah.
prepare yourself going into that stage.
So, like, I completely agree with you, Angel. That is definitely somewhere I've been as well. But also, I do still sometimes continue to struggle with prioritizing tasks because I could easily talk to myself and convince myself I really need something quite easily. And I think a lot of people also think that if they could do that, that means that that expense is justified. So how do you differentiate between an expense that is truly justified versus one that has, that you've just sort of like talked yourself into getting
Mm-mm.
spending?
Um, that's a really good question. I'm gonna quote something Ola said earlier, which is you have a budget you set for yourself that you can use to spend on things that you like, and if it's like over that budget, so over that budget, I'll probably take something from like next month if it's like if I really want it, if I really really want it, because I think living is at the present. Do something
Mm-hmm.
that makes yourself happy. Yes, we have these structures to help us organize our life and our budget a lot better. It it helps us in the long term, but I also think that it's important to do something that you are like that really makes you happy. So just don't go and buy a Louis Vuitton bag when you just but the newly released game that you like, that you wanna get, that is releasing today. What is the name? Because
You've
I think
exposed him.
Starfield.
I just exposed him.
Starfield.
Starfield.
Yeah. You've
Okay, so
also
for example,
exposed the exact date we're doing this recording, by the way.
yep, yep, I did. We do prep a month in advance. But I was saying, like, this game costs, let's say, $30 or like $50 or $80, and you don't have the game pass, so you probably have to buy it. You really want it. You've waited. You've been waiting for this for a really, really long time. Go ahead. Uh, and just don't spend on other stuff. If you like put $100 for this, why did I say dollar, £100 this month, where you can spend on something that you like, go ahead. If it's for me, it's actually 50, not 100, because I know I'm gonna go crazy. So it's like a 50, but I'll go like slightly towards 80, when I want to get something I like. That's what I do.
Okay. So all I'm hearing is I can get Starfield. That's all I heard.
Mm, if that
Yes?
makes you
Okay.
happy, if that
Yeah, I
It
think
if
has
it's
to
that
I
make
think
me
I think as
happy.
well, like life is all about balance. And like,
yeah,
look, like I'd be lying if I said I don't treat myself to new clothes, or if I don't treat myself to
yeah,
new trainers. And if I buy a new pair of trainers, my mum's probably gonna have a fit because there's nowhere in the house to put these new pair of trainers. But I think it's also about forward planning, and I think planning and setting goals is really important as well. So if you knew, let's say, Starfield was coming out in 5 months' time, then that gives you plenty of time to save towards that,
exactly.
rather than having to then dip into money you don't have, or which other people may do, use lines of credit. And obviously, we've seen some of the horror stories with like buy now, pay later. People
Mhm.
maybe not using credit cards responsibly. It's really important that we have these budgets because, again, it allows us to see how much we can save every month towards things we want to buy maybe in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I saved for like 8 months to get an iPad
Oh
just
wow!
recently.
I'm
Yeah.
impressed. I'm impressed. I think by the time I've saved for 8 months, I'm like, nah, I don't want it anymore because that money is quite a lot, isn't it? You're just like, no, I'd rather keep it.
No, I was so determined because like I keep seeing like Procreate videos, and I was like, I want to use Procreate,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
keep seeing people reading on like ebook and like make notes, and I was like, I really want to do that. Um, TikTok made me do it, so kept me motivated for 8 months.
Well, I would love that kind of motivation, but also the other thing that I have to consider is that our currency, exchange rates, and there's so many other factors to consider when you don't live in, let's say, a Western country, for example, as we'd say, because living as a South Asian, it's really hard to sort of like budget for these things to save it up. Because if I need an iPad, it's not going to take me 8 months to save up for it. It's going to take me a couple of years. So there's like stuff like that. So I think like the small joys of the getting a game, like a video game, is kind of how you can like placate
Going back
that
to
little dragon
justifying
in you
this,
that's like
really.
spend. Yes, I just really want the
Uh,
game. But
You treat yourself. I'll let you. I'll let you off.
thank you, appreciate it. But like, if youth is not for taking, you know, impulsive financial decisions, what's the point? Because you can make money later on in life. Spend on your video game.
yeah,
Kayla's, yes,
yeah.
To an
this was not a
extent.
pep talk though. This does not feel like a pep talk, but no, what are your thoughts on this sentiment on impulsive financial decisions in your youth? Like, what factors do you think usually lead to young people making such rash decisions? How can they overcome these tendencies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think impulse spending is probably has us all by the horns. I'm not going to say the other word, horns. And I think it's really hard because I feel like we're marketed to every single day. So I could be scrolling on Instagram and then I come across an ad from one of my influencer friends that I follow, or from just scrolling. They obviously have ad placements, and they'll tell me or try and convince me that I need a pair of shoes that I didn't think I even needed 10 minutes beforehand. So I think we are constantly marketed to, which I think has ramped up how we are impulse spending and why we're buying items on such rash decisions. And I also think buying online now is so easy. Like you can now buy things with Apple Pay when you're shopping on your phone, or you can now use buy now pay later. So buying online has become so easy, and I think that's why people now, if not more than ever, are probably spending frivolously more so than previous years. In terms of like how to reduce your like impulse spending, one of my biggest tips is to delete all of the shopping apps off your phone, because I know when I'm bored, I can be watching, I say it in inverted commas, one of my favourite TV programs, but I find myself scrolling on ASOS. And then that's when it becomes very easy to then be like, oh, these shoes that I've had in my basket are now on sale. I may have just purchased it. And I've also got next day delivery, which doesn't help. So it'd be very easy to shop online. So that's probably one of the biggest tips, because everyone normally has a lot of their favourite shopping apps on their phones now. So I'd say delete that. I'd also say delete all of your card details off of your phone and your laptop, because again, it causes a bit more friction when it comes to shopping. Now, it doesn't help because a lot of retailers now are allowing you to spend with Apple Pay, which leads into my third point in a moment. But deleting your card details again will allow you to really think about whether or not you want that purchase. Because again, if I'm on scrolling on ASOS and then I find something, but my purse is upstairs, I'm just like, oh, can I really be bothered to buy it now? Because can I really be asked
Yeah,
to walk up all these stairs just to get my
get your
card?
card.
So again, that again adds a little bit of friction. And then if you want to be really extreme, you can delete all your cards off Apple Pay. And I think again just adds another layer of frictions to your spending, because again, when we're tapping on the Apple Pay, again sometimes we really forget how much you're really spending. And a lot of people, I know, girl maths was a trend on TikTok. People are like, oh, if I didn't see it or I didn't feel the money, then I never spent it. So
Yeah.
when you have, so yeah, it's really important, if you can, remove all your cards as well. That is very extreme, so I'm not saying you have to do it, but that can be handy for some people. And then I guess lastly would be to try the 30-day rule. Have you guys heard of that before?
What's the
No,
30-day
no,
rule?
no. What is it?
Do tell,
Angel's like,
please.
what? So the
I was like,
30
oh
day
my god.
rule. So the 30-day rule is a really handy hack if you're someone that often shops impulsively. So what this means is that, if again we'll go back to ASOS as an example, if I'm scrolling on ASOS and I see some clothes that I like, I'll add it to my basket or add it on my favorite list. leave it there for 30 days, come back to it after 30 days and see if I still want those purchases. And most often than not, some sense kind of kicks in after 30 days. You're like, firstly, that's probably out of season. Don't know what I was thinking because it's ugly. Thirdly, I don't have the cash, so I'm not going to buy it. So things like that, again, it just adds those layers of friction when it comes to buying, because like I said, it's so easy to shop online now, and it makes it very easy to overspend money you don't have.
Actually do agree with that, especially because we also have this shopping platform that allows you to pay in cash after the item you've ordered arrives. So in my head, and a lot of people I know also have complained about this, you tell yourself, I'll have the money, I'll order it,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 weeks later or like a week later it arrives and you're just like, whoa, I just spent 5K on this.
Mm.
How am I going to pay rent?
Yeah.
And yeah, that happens quite frequently, and it's one of the pitfalls of the digital age in
Mm.
general, is that everything is so much easier. It's so easy to drop like a hefty amount on a new pair of shoes just because they look really nice. You're a click away. Right?
Yeah.
But I think the other issue, like personally, I've always been a bit conflicted about this, but credit cards, yay or nay? Are you for it or against it? Do you think it's a bad idea or a good idea? Okay, who has the most intense opinion on this?
I don't have one. I feel like it's going back to having self-discipline that would take years to practice. And if you have practiced that, give you a like whatever card you have, like I'll be fine with it. Like because I trust myself that I'll be okay. So it's more like that. So I'm more like into practicing self-discipline. Um, and then to have a good healthy spending habit, and then if I have a credit card, I know I'll I'll pay back, or like I'll definitely evaluate and use that card to my advantage when it comes to like future purchases of like houses, whatever. If that does happen, I'm still manifesting that. But that could be favorable in the future for me. But it's always about self discipline at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. I am someone that has two credit cards, and I wouldn't say I'm for them. I wouldn't say I'm against them. I think it comes down to the individual. So it's again whether or not you can trust yourself to use a credit card wisely and responsibly, because credit cards have some amazing benefits. That's why I have two. I have one for my business, one for my personal finances. But for some people, they would never want to touch a credit card because of, they maybe they're someone that does shop impulsively, or maybe there's someone that maybe has bad connotations or has had bad history when it comes to spending money or using debt and credit. So again, it comes very down to the person. But yeah, I'm very impartial. I personally love my credit cards, but I'm not gonna lie, does it sometimes make buying again a lot more easier? Yes, because obviously you then have like extra cash that you don't have on your current account. So again, it's about whether or not you can use them wisely. And for me, for both of my credit cards, I have a certain limit that, well, a very low credit card limit on both of them, because I know if I had it any higher, then you could easily creep into lifestyle inflation. Well, it's not really lifestyle inflation because it's not my money, but you could easily start spending more because you have more credit available to you. So it's about being wise. And again, like I said, if you don't trust yourself to use credit, then just stay clear of it.
Absolutely 100%. Like, if you trust yourself to handle a credit card, I think then you know what you're doing,
Mm,
because you have to know what you're doing to be able to have that much confidence in yourself
Yeah.
with a credit card. But yeah, well, let's not forget one more important point, that it's still, even if it's buy now pay later, even if it's a credit card, it's still technically a form of debt.
yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
And avoiding debt, talking about debt, is not very, it's not something that we look forward to when we're younger. We don't quite comprehend just how bad it could get, how one missed payment could ruin someone's life. Like, it's
Mm,
very important to actually understand how debt works. So before taking out a loan or before even considering any of these options, what do you think, uh, what do you think they need to know about debt and how it works before they, sort of like give into this and like take a loan out, get a credit card?
yeah, yeah. I think the biggest important thing to remember is that firstly, it's not free money. Like when you are using buy now, pay later, believe it or not, or if you're using a credit card, if you're using a taken out a loan, you are not. using your own money. Like, you are borrowing money from the bank, whether or not you can see it as cash or if it's virtual on a card, it is not yours. Secondly, I think again what people forget is that you can borrow that money and maybe, you might be late to pay it back and nothing will happen. But unfortunately, a lot of credit that you do take out comes with high interest charges. So what that means is that banks will charge you to borrow this money. However, that comes with a caveat in the fact that maybe if you have a credit card, it will have high interest, but if you pay it off in full every month, then you will obviously won't have to pay any interest. However, maybe you're someone that continues to spend every month and forgets to pay it off in full, or you only cover the minimum repayment that needs to be met, then again you will be subject to high interest charges, which I think people forget when they start seeing all these extra charges, and they're like, "Oh, I only borrowed £100, but now my card is saying that I owe £150." It's like, well, because of the interest charges applied to your debt. So that's really important to remember.
And while I do agree 100%, it's also impossible to completely avoid debt, especially if you are a student
Mm-hmm.
or someone in a foreign country and you really are struggling to pay for your tuition fees or just your a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard haircuts are pretty expensive, right? I don't know about like others, but I could just like shave my head off and call it a day. So for me, I'm just
which you
like, let me
did.
just spend $60. I did so many times. It's so liberating. Um, but it's these kinds of situations may tempt them into wanting to get not wanting to get in debt, but wanting to take out loans, or like they might turn to shady services to get some immediate money. And scams, this is a serious and a really bad problem, and also they could get into illegal activities, criminal
Yeah.
activities in order to make that kind of money. But what are some genuine bits of advice that you could give people to just ease that financial burden? What are ways that they could help themselves, especially if they find themselves overwhelmed by the expenditure and how much money they could technically afford for their living needs?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very easy to say to people now is to just reduce your expenses. Cut out everything you enjoy just to be able to afford to live. And I just don't think it's very fair to tell people to do that, especially with the cost of living crisis. We all work so hard for our money. So that being told that you can't let me
Enjoy.
say that, you can't enjoy something like Spotify or go to the gym, I think it's really cruel. So I think now it's about how can you increase your income. So how can you make extra money on the side to then accommodate for the costs and things you enjoy doing. So now there's so many ways to kind of create and gain extra income, whether that be online surveys, online focus groups, dog walking. My friend's now got a dog sitting business. I think that's crazy. It's so good. I love
Oh
it.
wow.
Um, Even if like you're someone that maybe could do tutoring, or if you have a side hustle idea, look at doing that. And the slightly easier but challenging way of getting more money is to negotiate a pay rise. So again, now I think in this day and age, I think a lot of people have cut out everything they can from their budget. It's about how can you then increase your income. So I think those are a few ways people can look at increasing their income instead.
Angel, do you have anything to add to that? What were your tips that helped save you money while you were an intern or student?
Right. I'll definitely say don't get into that. Like, just don't even try, think, don't, just don't. It's um like all I said it in a really nice way of like increase your income instead of looking into it. But I know, like, not from my personal experience, but I've heard a lot of stories about the scams and stuff. It really hurt a person or their family or their loved ones, and it would take years for you to recover. So I would really suggest any like students, recent graduates, or even if you're a few years into your career without fully understand what this is about or like understand what you really need, don't go into it. And I completely agree with increasing my income. I also try to like have fun with the money that I had, that I have, like
Mm,
that I earn every month as well. I mentioned previously about cooking. I think that was really fun. I know living in London is a lot of temptations, especially around Notting Hill Gate. So many new shops opening every single week, month. I see new shops all the time, and they are really cool. Like, they are really cool ones. But like, I guess it's important to have a mindset of like enjoying your own life, and then you can have fun, but then also enjoy the one that you have now, including like fun
mm,
cooking, trying some recipes, and you can. I feel like what I like about London is you can have fun without spending too much money. So I like to go to Hyde Park with just like, I don't know, like a box of strawberry with just some like a coffee, and then we can spend the entire day at the park and we'll have a really fulfilling
Yeah.
um, day. Just have, have it with your friends. Go to the galleries, it's free. But like talking specifically in London, obviously
Hmm.
you can investigate what else you can do in your city that you can enjoy without having to spend that much money, and investigate. Sorry, I keep saying investigate. Invest more on connections with people, relationships, and that that also gives you a lot of like fulfillment. And like in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. Both very, very solid pieces of advice. And also, I'm really grateful, Ola, for, the bit about not reducing people to just simply saying, you earn more money. Because it just got me thinking that often a lot of advice that we get on the internet is just like, work the extra hours, work your weekends, it's about the hustle culture. You got to like work for your dreams, work for your dreams. And the problem is there are people in the midst, I mean, still, even though like we don't have lockdowns as frequently
Mm.
anymore, there's still a pandemic. There are people with disabilities and so on
Yeah.
and so forth who can't just go out and make more money. So I feel like that's an aspect we don't talk about enough when we like offer advice.
Mm.
And also, it's not that it's not available. It's just not uncommon. It's just not part of the mainstream. What do we do about people who don't have equal access to these opportunities that allow them to make more money? What if a person is only able to like have hold down a part-time job? What could happen to them in such a situation? How do you think that we could better address these issues in our own, like in our content, like right now? How
Hmm.
could we address their concerns in these issues?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really fair point. And again, like I said, everyone's situation's so different. So that piece of advice might help loads of people. That might also not apply to a lot of people. So I think when it comes to writing content, I think it's just being mindful of the people that don't have those opportunities like us. So it is kind of like, okay, these are the tips I've got, but what else can we offer them? So I know in the UK, there is a lot of government support. Whether or not you love the government right now, that is irrelevant, but there is a lot of government support. Whether you are, maybe you have a disability, maybe you're unable to work, maybe you have to work reduced hours because you're a carer, etc., etc. The UK government does provide a lot of support. It's whether or not you are aware of it and how do you access it. So again, a lot of information is on the government website. So if you are someone that isn't able to work or is struggling financially, then I always recommend checking that website, because new things as well. I think they're slowly starting to realise we are all struggling. Slowly but surely, there are more incentives being added to the roster. So again, always make sure you are aware of the help available to you, and go one step further as well. Take advantage of free organisations that are helping and offering free and partial advice as well. I know a lot of us sometimes are too proud to admit that we need help sometimes, and I think we've seen the last 3 years have been really tough on, like, in the pandemic and mental health and finance and stuff like that. But there are great organizations that are happy to have you rant on the phone or cry on the phone, laugh on the phone, whatever. But yeah, I mean that seriously. If you are genuinely struggling, please don't suffer in silence.
And it brings us back to information, because when we started out we did talk about how people are financially unaware, but it's also possible that they're unaware of the aid that they can access. And you did mention that perhaps they may not know.
Hmm.
And what is the best way for them to sort of like uh, identify what viable paths there are for them
Yes.
to get some help?
So yeah, so like I mentioned, the government website, so it's gov.uk, I think is the government website. Just type in benefits and a load of benefits will come up available. Citizens Advice is a great website as well that breaks down the different bits of benefits, and I think they have a hotline as well. So if you don't understand what's kind of being explained on the website, they can kind of go through that with you. Again, other organisations do a great job of that as well. So if you are currently in existing debt, then organisations like Step Change are great too. I'm trying to think where else, but yeah, those are like the main places really that I'd really recommend.
Thanks for sharing. And just one question. You shared a few helpful places to look to for information. Now I want to know which unhelpful pieces of advice have like you that you've encountered, the most ridiculous ones. I want to know what they were from both of you, Angel and Ola. I mean, I frankly I've encountered a few, like a fair share online myself.
Hmm.
I would like to know which was the most ridiculous one you encountered.
I've got two that come to my mind, but Angel, do you want to go first?
um, I guess well, to me, because I'm very careful when it's about managing money, so I'm really careful with the advice that I take, and I only take it from credible sources, and I would definitely check it out myself. But I did, I think over the pandemic, encountered some financial advices on TikTok about how you invest, and like where you just put your money, and I felt like it was said in such an easy way that I see a lot of people commenting saying that they want to give it a try and stuff like that. I like the fact that there are more people um, wanting to learn more about this and wanting to invest more, but then sometimes not all the sources are correct, and it's just still worth doing some research by yourself and understanding what you can do with that, because it's not as easy as it says online. um, and another thing is probably just don't compare yourself with people on the internet, especially your social media. I wouldn't say they're a source, but they do influence you about how you would make some of your financial decisions. And let's say what you're gonna buy, or like, or just feel, sometimes it could be, for some people might feel jealous of how other people's lifestyle would be, and then in terms make you feel a bit bitter about your financial situation, and may indirectly drive you to make some decisions that won't be beneficial to you. So yeah, social media is not a source, but it could be a factor to influence you to make bad decisions.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I guess one of the two wild things that I've counted across is number one, invest all of your money in crypto. You don't need savings, just invest all in crypto because
Or
it's going to 10x over like the course of 3 months. I'm like,
yeah, I
okay,
thought about
okay,
that.
you do you,
Yeah.
you do you. Whoever's listening, whatever you believe about crypto, please don't invest all your money into it. That's what I'm going to say on the matter. Secondly, I had someone tell me the other day as well that they're no longer contributing to their pension in case they die early. And I was like, okay. I was like, but what if you don't? But again,
Ooh.
each their own. So yeah, I mean, if you are listening, please don't withdraw from your pension. But yeah, very interesting views people have on money. Obviously, you can't educate everyone. Some people don't want to be educated, but yeah, it's very interesting to hear people's views sometimes.
I mean, all your money, all your money in crypto.
All your savings
I've,
in crypto, yeah.
oh my goodness, I will not speak on the matter.
No,
However,
neither
for
shall I,
I
because
am
I'll be
not.
here all day.
Next time, that's what we're going to talk about. Should you invest all your money in crypto?
All.
Ola breaks down. Ola breaks down. Not even Ola breaks it down. Ola just breaks down.
Yeah,
All your
literally.
money? Yeah. So,
I'd be broke if I did that right now. Oh, that's what I'm going to say.
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
agreed. But,
Anything that's a trend, it's just
yeah, trend.
yeah,
NFTs.
yeah.
I'm not
Going back
saying
to the
a
point, yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question. Next question is also our final question. See, myself included, a lot of people in our early 20s, we compared our journeys and panicked about it when it came to financial security in particular. We'd be like, oh, this friend of ours already bought a house and they're 25. And a lot of the time, all this panicking, it's over rarely attainable goals because
Mm,
who knows, that person who bought the house could have had funding from their parents. You never know. They might have gotten a like a major good deal. You never know why or how they were able to afford that. So like, but the panicking is it's unstoppable sometimes
mm,
because you're thinking to yourself, okay, I have no money to like cover basic necessities. I will not be able to like buy a house. How can I buy a house? Will I be able to retire by the time I'm like 80? These are all very real questions I've received from my friends.
mm.
So I'm just saying, what is the advice that you would give these people? What would you tell them about taking their time or their financial journeys? What are your thoughts, Ola? Would you like to go first?
Yeah, good question. So, for me, I think it's about identifying what your goals are, regardless of social media, regardless of what your friends do, regardless of what your family told you to do. What are your goals and what do you want to do? Like now, I'm self-employed. People are always like, "Oh, so when are you going to buy a house?" And I'm like, "I don't want a mortgage. I'd rather spend that money to go traveling the world." So, I know as much as I love to see it with people buying their house, and I'm a bit like, "Oh, like I wish that was me." But deep down, it has almost to hand me the keys to a property tomorrow, and they said you had this mortgage payment, you had these council taxes, this. I'll be like, sign me off that list because I'm not ready yet. I'm just not ready. And for me, my biggest goal is to save absolutely towards the property, but to also travel. And whilst I've got no kids, no mortgage, I want to enjoy just traveling and seeing the world, enjoying life. So if there's anyone listening right now and they feel like they may be behind, ignore what social media or society tells you what makes you successful, but work out on what your actual goals are. And one of my friends said to me on one of my podcasts a couple of years back now, she said, make sure your goals are your own goals, not because someone makes you feel like it has to be a goal of yours as well. So yeah, that would be my biggest tip to kind of round off the podcast.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful advice. And I think we should all listen to the bit about not letting people social media tell us how to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
do that, because sometimes whilst we do like get tips from like content creators online, some are quite helpful, whereas some could be quite detrimental, or
Mm,
it might work for some people but not fit you. So
yeah.
that's just something I just wanted to add on. Does not mean that everything online is bad, but also be cautious and understand yourself and your own habits a little bit more before just taking advice, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Angel, what advice would you like to give?
I am I agree with Ola 100%, and that is almost as if like this is probably something I would say with no comparing and setting your own goal. On top of that, I just remember like when I graduated was when COVID hit as well. So it was a lot of like insecurity around like what I'm going to do, and then a lot of comparisons and a lot of people who either got married or like got a house or they probably get to travel a lot more. And I was just wondering how did that all happen when I just stuck in a house, or like when I was like I don't even know how to manage um, my income properly. I don't even know how to set up certain things. I felt like I was so behind, and I feel like at the end of the day it's more about inner peace that you have with yourself. Setting your own goals, you should have peace with them, and also just to see like people's life as kind of like a story, so not attaching yourself to what happened to them. Don't have too much of an emotional response. It's more like I see that story happening and I'm happy for them. I see that story happening and I'm happy, and I'm happy for them. And at the same time be happy and proud of yourself, of things that you have achieved, and have that peace, because you will achieve your goal. Like whatever goals you have, you will achieve them for sure, no doubts. I
Yeah,
believe in everyone.
it might take a little bit longer or shorter than you anticipated, but you will get there if you put the determination
Yeah.
into it. Like, yeah, if you're resilient, then there's no reason why you wouldn't achieve your goals.
Mm. And some people might have been saving for like years to do that. You just didn't know.
Yeah.
Like that's what happened to one of my friends who bought a flat in China. She's been saving for years, and I knew that was her goal. But maybe you just saw like an announcement, and maybe some people be like, "Oh, how did she get there?" And I'm behind. But no, like she had a really healthy spending habit when she was 18, and she's been working since then. So yeah, then that's what happened. That's why she got it when she's 27.
Well, that's see, you never really know anyone's story, and that just brings us back to the bit where we were like, our journeys are different, even with similar aspects. Our individual journeys are different. So, I guess with that motivational note, that brings our episode to a conclusion, and it has been so wonderful meeting you and speaking with you, Ola. And thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much,
Honestly,
Ola.
honestly,
Really
thank you
appreciate.
so much for having me.
No, thank you for joining us, because now we're gonna get rich. Because now we're gonna get rich.
We
So,
hope so.
right.
Money
Okay.
mindset.
Thank
Money
you,
magnet.
everyone, for listening.